Oops, Lou just sent the email right now. Unfortunately,
Okay. Good morning, councillors. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we gather here, the Yubera people, and pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging, and we continue to acknowledge their ongoing connection and relationship to both land, culture and community. Also, just to cover off on the live streaming, recording and publishing of council meetings, I have to say this as per our standing orders and legislative requirements. This council meeting is being streamed live, recorded and published in accordance with council standing orders, including publishing on council's website. By attending a public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. We are all required to tell you that you may be subject to legal action if your actions, comments result in inappropriate or unacceptable behaviour. Thank you. So with that, I officially open the meeting.
give it a bang.
We're joined this morning by Father Stephen Hanley for our opening prayer. So thank you, Father.
Thanks, councillors. It's so great to be with you. I want to just take us simply through a simple reflection on the Our Father, if I may. I cannot say our if my faith has no room for others in their needs. I cannot say Father if I do not demonstrate this relationship in my daily living. I cannot say who art in heaven if all of my interests and concerns are in things and possessions. I cannot say hallowed be thy name if I, who is called by God's name, am not holy. I cannot say thy kingdom come if I act as though I am the centre of the universe. I cannot say thy will be done if I am unwilling or resentful of having it in my life. I cannot say on earth as it is in heaven unless I am truly a person for others, willing to serve and give help where it's needed. I cannot say give us this day our daily bread without doing my part to provide for the needs of all around me. I cannot say forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us if I continue to harbour a grudge against another. I cannot say lead us not into temptation if I deliberately choose to remain in a situation where I'm likely to be tempted. I cannot say deliver us from evil if I'm not prepared to back my plea for God's help with constant prayer. I cannot say thine is the kingdom if I do not act as a part of that kingdom, responsible, caring, willing to serve. I cannot say thine is the power if I fear what my neighbours and friends may say or do. I cannot say thine is the glory if I'm seeking my own glory first. I cannot say forever if I am too anxious about each day's worries and activities. I cannot say amen unless I honestly say, cost what it may, this is my prayer. May this prayer continue to live on in our thoughts and in our actions.
thanks, Father.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Absent on council business, we don't have anyone. Item 4 is apologies. We have apologies and leave was granted to the Mayor, Greg Whipson, and we also have an apology from Councillor Mann, who's also seeking a leave of absence today due to illness. So moving on to item 4.1, that Councillor Mann be granted a leave of absence for today's meeting. I have a mover, Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 5 is condolences, and I thank Father Stephen Hanley for staying for this today. I'd like to offer on behalf of the council condolences to Dorothy Fordyce's family. Her funeral is today at 11 o'clock. Dorothy was actually a local from Bloomsbury. Her and her husband Frank have 8 children. And they had a wonderful farm up at Bloomsbury for many, many years before moving to Mackay. And her daughters are both Jane Corello and Margaret Brown, who have been integral in the Matsura Sister City relationship over many, many years. And I know that Dorothy's also contributed generously to that relationship as well through sewing efforts and other welcoming opportunities and home host dinners and the like as well. So we asked Father Hanley to pass those condolences on to the family today. And my apologies, but I'm not able to attend today as well. So.
I certainly will pass on the message.
Thank you, Father. So moving on, item 6, conflict of interest. We have listed there for item 11.3 a number of perceived conflicts of interest, and we'll deal with those as we reach that agenda item today. Thank you. Item 7, confirmation of the minutes. Item 7.1. Thank you, Councillor Casey, that the ordinary minutes dated 24th of April be adopted. Moved by Councillor Casey, seconded by Councillor Englert. All those in favour? Motion is carried. There is no business arising out of those minutes. There are no mayoral minutes. Item 10, consideration of committee reports and recommendations. 10.1 is the draft minutes of the Sport and Recreation Advisory Committee. Thank you, Councillor Payton. Moved by Councillor Payton. Would you like to speak to those, Councillor Payton?
Yeah.
And seconded by Councillor Englert. Sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Payton.
Thank you, Roshan. Sport and Rec Advisory Committee meeting was held on 10th April with good attendance, good numbers there. The committee reviewed the terms of reference with a couple of changes, mainly being an alteration around the wording from issues and opportunities to a more proactive aim of opportunities and direction, and inclusion of additional criteria for representatives. There's also an adjustment of the membership to exclude a delegate if they fail to attend three consecutive meetings. There is also a change to the quorum to be 5 members, including at least 2 council representatives, but excluding state agencies who sit in that role as advisory only. The rest of the meeting allowed the committee to review the draft sporting achievement acknowledgement program policy. It's a mouthful for a policy. I've changed that name, which will be brought to council for approval in future meetings. Council officers presented the Try the 5 program and also the Sports Hero program, and the committee seen that these are great programs to go forwards. There was further discussion around the Go Clubs database, which council's officers are looking at the moment, and what incentives could be attached to that. Council officer Phil Grobler gave a presentation on the locations of the sporting clubs throughout the Mackay region, and discussion of the pros and cons with that. And the committee also workshopped the sport and rec strategy, advising priorities for the facility planning and provisions actions. So I would like to move that the terms of reference be endorsed and minutes be received.
Thank you, Councillor Payton. So just noting, councillors, as well, that this is also including the updated terms of reference to be endorsed, that hopefully will help that committee function as well. But we thank the committee in particular for their contribution of the prioritisation, which is really important. So we have moved by Councillor Payton, seconded by Councillor Englert. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Moving on to 11.1, correspondence and officers' reports. We've got the Office of the Mayor and CEO monthly report for May. Thank you, CEO.
Good morning, Your Worship. Morning, councillors. Organisational focus around employee and public safety is ongoing. Our lag indicators are excellent. You'll notice that we had, I was going to say only, but it's 5 too many. We had 5 injuries in April, which is a significant reduction compared to the previous 2 months. So we continue to work hard as councillors as I've asked on our minor injuries as well, because the major impact numbers are going very well. Progress on the next stage in the mountain bike strategy is progressing well in the last couple of weeks. Councillor Inlet is leading that. with consultants undertaking feasibility analysis, and we had a good turn up, I think 35 or 40, I think, from memory for one up the valley. So that's off and running, which is exciting. The wave pool EOI closed on the 30th of April. We had 4 submissions. We're working through our procurement processes around that. We plan to do that next week. So we'll be able to give some feedback after that on how they look. We haven't seen those yet. Continue to do a significant amount of work with the councils around our 19-20 budget. Ongoing wet weather is impacting many of our capital projects, which you'll see in some of our May reforecast. And thankfully the sun's out now, so hopefully we can catch up on that. The asset management restructure occurred on the 1st of April, and we've commenced the planning for a more detailed framework, which we promise to come back to in about August. Our second round of our Works for Queensland programs is nearing an end, and we will have them all completed by the end of July. We also had a consultant, a number of councils have been involved. Thanks for your input on the Morani Precinct Master Plan process. So that's looking quite exciting to work through that process. So we'll keep working on that. The PDA Master Plan, we're about to give you a briefing this afternoon, Your Worship, on where we are with the Master Plan and some costings around that. So that'll be a discussion this afternoon. And we continue to work hard on the couple of Northern Beaches Community Hub land options as requested. We should be back to you in May on that as well. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. CEO, do I have any questions of the CEO? Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just in relation to our small-scale solar project on page 37. This renewable energy plan was designed to generate about 1,500 kilowatts of energy. And from my recollection, Acting Mayor, this was to reduce our electricity bill by more than $500,000 a year. We were told that financial year we could be looking at saving, a good percentage of that, as the units would be up and producing power by sort of September, and the majority would be up by January of this year. Acting Mayor, today marks the 1-year anniversary of us issuing that contract. But in reading the CEO's report and doing a few back-of-the-envelope calculations, I noticed that we've only got 270 kilowatts operational and about 1,387 in progress or waiting to be connected. So my questions are, firstly, could the CEO please refresh my memory and see whether my numbers and my timeline for installation is correct? But could he update councillors on the revised savings from the first year of operation? Secondly, is there a shortfall and will it affect the budget surplus or deficit? And when do we expect completion of the project? And is the project on budget, and what percentage of the tender price has been paid to the contractor to date? And finally, if I could, will this project still come in on budget?
Thank you, Councillor Bonaventura. So, CEO, I assume that you have also put together some responses on the back of an envelope for Councillor Bonaventura.
I have, Your Worship.
To respond there to those questions.
Yeah, thank you.
As
They
well
may not
around
be
installation savings and on-time delivery.
Thank you, Councillor Bonaventura. I may not answer in exact order if that's okay. So I'll do the financials first. So in the 18-19 budget, we assumed $300,000 saving in that budget for the solar installation on the basis that we'd get them done partway through the year, and that was the estimate we had at that time. At the end of April, we've spent $5.3 million of our electricity bill, and our budget is 7.1. So right now we are on track to meet the 7.1 million budget, which included the $300,000 savings. Then, to be completely transparent, because some of the solar is late, we've obviously found savings because it's not just solar we focus on. We're doing tariff changes, we're doing sustainability. We spent money that you supported here, changing out 987 lights. We've got the MEC heating on the roof. So all those savings were included as well. So we're actually going to be on budget for 18-19, so there was no negative impact. If the solar had been earlier, it would have been better than that, but we're not impacting. The 19-20 draft budget has $450,000 of savings. All projects will be completed by the 30th of June. And we have between 300 and 400 kilowatts who have been sitting on the roofs, e.g. the new lab has had the solar panels sitting there for 2 months. The reason you can't connect it is there's no switchboard because the lab job has gone later and we're waiting for the contractor to put the switchboard in so you can connect. The area we've had the most trouble with is, you will recall the tender discussion was we asked the contractor to use locals. The contractor has had major issues late last year getting anybody to be interested in that. That took some delay. They have now appointed a local company called Jcor, who are now doing all the land-based ones. A number of the land-based ones also had some geotech issues. And right now there is hundreds of kilowatts sitting ready to go, but we have to actually physically shut down our sewage treatment plants and water treatment plants to make the connection. We don't want to do that in haste and make sure those plants, when you turn the power off and connect it, when you turn it back on, there's no interruption to our water or sewage. So that was probably overlooked at this time about the issues that's created when you turn power off to connect. And we've had a heap of trouble, or the contractors had a heap of trouble trying to get locals qualified to do the connections. So all those are excuses, and we've worked through some of them. The MEC roof had when they checked it, the clips on the roof weren't standard, so that's caused a delay. They've done the pull test on that now, so that's going in May. So we are very confident. The Director of Capital Works flew down to Brisbane to meet the contractor 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, to go through the program and go through each issue. So we will be finished by the 30th of June. We will realise all savings in 1920.
I still haven't got a clear answer on what percentage has been paid to the contractor at this stage, and will it come in on budget?
Yes, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sorry.
CEO?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. I'd have to check the percentage paid. We can send that around. Probably the Director will have it in the next 5 minutes off our capital report. We do send those capital reports out. You can get that information off those reports, but I don't have the number. And it'll be on budget. Right now, there is a little bit of a risk about, at one of our water treatment plants, we were talking about just having some crusher dust type stuff, and they're talking about putting a hard stand down to avoid some flooding issues, which is an extra 15 grand. We're trying to see if we can fit that within the budget. So if it's not on budget, it'll be so close. Yes.
Councillor Bonaventura, does that address your concerns? Councillor May.
Can I, just following on from that, my question was going to be around monitoring the savings. Like, is that just being done as the dollars and cents when the bills come in, or are we actually monitoring the power that's being generated and us using that power?
CEO?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So it's mostly the latter. So what we've tried to work in is it's not just when the bill comes in, we have some online monitoring, and we've done a little bit of work about that as part of this process, Councillor May. We don't want to be reactionary after the bill comes in and say we could have done this or that. So part of built in is to online monitoring of, it's part of the going in, and we think we can then fine tune our power usage as well, because obviously during the day when you've got solar is where you get the benefit. We don't have battery technology in at the moment. So that's a key priority for us to make sure once we've got all these in, how do we then rationalise our operations best we can to get the full benefit? There's also, as you know, is outside these 21 sites is we put solar on the mark, completely outside, because our policy that we've agreed with you is any opportunities we build new assets, we'll have a look at the opportunity to save costs. So in that particular case, the capital outlay was returned very quickly by putting solar on those buildings with the large pumps and that are used. So we're looking at that on every opportunity as well.
So just a further question. So will there be staff allocated responsibility to monitor that going forward? Otherwise, I'm just frightened that we're going to not maximise the opportunity that we've created here.
And then to add to that, CEO, I think, and what is the mechanism that will be used to monitor that? So obviously we've invested in a sustainability strategy. So is this going to be monitored, one, obviously by finance through that mechanism, but is it also going to be monitored through any of our other strategies?
Yeah, thank you. Answer both questions. I think it's the same sort of intent, is that, the accountants get the numbers on the page, but the sustainability team, and we've set up a sustainability group that's not just in that one department, it's cross-functional. I see their role is to monitor that, look for opportunities, talk to the asset owner about managing that. I think your point's a good one. We all sit here and pat ourselves on the back once it's done and we're saving $450. There is potentially hundreds of thousands once you get that data to run it even more efficiently. So as I say, just to Councillor Bonaventura's point, the solar it's a large part of our investment, $2.something million, but we've been working hard on other opportunities with lighting, and every time we put in, just talking to a member of the public gallery around some of the installations at the boat ramps around low power usage or zero power usage solar. So we're looking at those opportunities through that sustainability group as well, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? To the CEO? Councillor Walker.
I'll have a couple of questions there. Landwich Beach sand renourishment, now, is that one finalised? And also the Dalrymple Road project, is that they both completed? Or?
Yeah, CEO, can we have an update there?
Yeah, thank you. The Lambert speech must be, if it's not finished now, it must be in the next weeks or so. It was only the re-veg side of it, Councillor Walker, to complete. So that's, for all intents and purposes, probably right now, a couple of days after the report was written, it would be finished. Or if not, it'll be just the final plannings going in. On Darrenpool Road, we've only done emergency repairs to that road. So we've actually got it to a point where it's usable. We're defining an engineer, I think I said last meeting, the engineer's come out. We've now got a plan and a costing of the full rebuild that we've submitted to QRA on getting funding for that. But the works are only emergency repairs at the moment to make it usable. Once we've got that funding, hopefully funding approval through, we're getting the design ready to do the full blown work. And it's the same with the Boundary Creek Bridge up at Bloomsbury. It was under the same issue. We've done repairs to make it usable while we're waiting to do the final design.
Questions, Councillor Englert?
Electronic 29, undertake race review of all rating category status in the red. Are we talking about an internal officer level review, or are we talking about the councillor participation in that?
Yeah, thank you, Ash. Thanks, Councillor. No, it's the councillor one, so we're not planning to do anything internally unless we've agreed with the councillors on any rates. And it's just orange because I think I had a timeline there. It's red, sorry. Yeah, I had a timeline then to sort it out with councillors earlier. I think we've got another budget briefing this afternoon. So my view is we shouldn't be too far away from actually saying the review's been done, whatever that means, and it's incorporated or not into the 1920 budget.
Yes, Councillor Englert?
Electronic 30, develop a community-led SES management template in the orange, I believe it is. Now, is that management template, or are we referring to the overarching strategy? And given that the session, so we got a strategic session on training held in March, we'll seek an extension into June. When could we possibly expect a draft strategy, or management template?
CEO?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So yeah, it's definitely around the strategic side. Management's not doing any templates outside the strategic group. So as you know, the last strategic group meeting in March, was we've gone away to scope all the information, try to collect all the information out of the different areas, including QFIS. QFIS were tasked with going away and doing some specific work as well out of that scope, and we committed to coming back with the first draft of that information at the June meeting, which I think is June 7th or 13th. I think the meeting just changed. And come back and talk to that group about the draft. My expectation is it's a lot of work, very complex, and there'll be a lot of discussion, as you would know. My view is that group might say we need to fine tune and tidy some stuff up. And then my view is as quickly as possible after that group get together again, probably not wait its normal timeline. And then once that group's agreed, come back and talk to council, and obviously got a couple of councillors on that group as well.
Councillor Englert?
And is QFIS committed to that June deadline?
CEO?
That's what it was very clear out of the meeting. The councillor May was out that was their commitment, because we're out, as you know, I committed our side to paying for someone to collect all the data and all that to keep this moving, because it's been a bit slow, as you know. What I'll do is I'll follow up with them personally just to make sure that we don't get to June and we've done our bit and they haven't done theirs.
Just to follow on from that, CEO, are there any potential budget implications from the delivery of that strategy that may come before the QFIS group, but then council after June?
Yeah, that's a good question, Your Worship. I think if it's an asset issue, my view is we've got a large yellow fleet budget that we've even got a plan for. We could fit any assets in my view. If it's our asset, we've signed an MOU, as you would know, so we're clear on whose assets are what. I wouldn't be worried about that side of it. If there's operational, I'm not sure, Councillor Inga could correct me, but most of the training of the SES volunteers actually work for QFIS. We only have one employee. We've got plenty of money in the budget for our employee to be trained. If my personal view would be that, subject to the strategic group's direction and then back through here, is if QFIS were going to be not as quick on doing something that the group agrees due to budget constraints, I would consider talking to our members on the strategic group and this council about whether we did something. I'm not thinking we're talking about numbers that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think we could handle that through our normal budgeted processes and reforecast and we manage it somehow. That would be my concern, to be honest, that we come up with some strategies that's taken us a long time and then there's, because of financial reasons, we don't accelerate that. I think a lot of that would be under the MOU, under QFIS's side, but we've got a strong commitment to SES. I would think that coming back to this council through the strategic group and saying if they can't do it quickly enough, but we think it's important enough, I think we should consider it. But I wouldn't be worried that it would be a number that would concern us in our overall budgets.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking things like recruitment of volunteers and
I think we could cover that off.
communications and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Councillor Engler?
That's ultimately my concern, Chair, is that I'm aware that QFIS under budgeted this year to probably about $2 million, and volunteer funds have been used to keep local trainers up to date with their obligations under the QFIS model. So what I'm ultimately getting at is possibly, and I know it's been suggested to council for a number of years that a contribution, and I believe it's not the hundreds of thousands, I believe it's in the $10,000 to $20,000, that there may need to be some consideration from council's point of view to fill the gap, to have that ready in case there is a gap needed, because training is 80% of what they do. And I think through the Strategic Directions Group, we've started to realise that training is the Achilles heel in the entire organisation. That's where most attention and perhaps investment needs to be in the medium term. So I would consider that we need to think about, that they may fail to provide that support and we might have to do it.
Okay, CEO?
Yes. So just for your information, so in the Office of the Mayor and CEO, there is a bucket of money that we've put in there for initiatives during the year that could come up that we aren't aware of now, like that. And I think from memory, it was $150,000. So that's not a slush fund for the Mayor and CEO. What that is we all know that as you move through the year, you can't get everything right at the start. So instead of pocketing away in departments, we put it into my area to make sure there's a discipline of use of that. And so my view is, I agree with you, $10,000 or $20,000, that would be a bucket of money that we could easily call on that's already in the budget for 1920, should this council agree to use it for that, and quickly allocate that money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? No? Okay, so we've got before us the Office's recommendation that the Office of Mayor and CEO monthly report for May be received. Moved by Councillor Payton, seconded by Councillor Engler. Councillor Payton, you should speak to it.
Thank you, Worship. It's great to see safety remaining high priority with 5 relatively minor injuries, although we don't see any of our employees being injured at work. But fortunately, no lost time injuries have been shown, so congratulations to all staff for maintaining this direction. Cyclone Debbie works on the unsealed road network is at 92% completion, and I'm sure staff will be happy to see this complete so they can concentrate on the normal road maintenance and get on the situation normal. It's also good to see the quick response to the Dalrymple Road landslip, with the road to be usable, as the CEO said earlier this month. And it will also be good to see the Midge Point and Lambert's Beach cyclone restoration works to be complete in May. And I would hope that we are coming into good weather from now on, which may help with the completion of the renewable energy solar installation and allow council to start seeing the savings due to this program. So yeah, another good report and a very busy month overall.
Thank you, Councillor Payton. Any other speakers? Thank you, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaking for?
For the motion. Look, happy to support it, but just like on record that I am disappointed at the position we are with our solar project being a whole year. Would like to have thought we would have been a little bit better and been able to realise savings a little bit earlier, but happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bonaventura. And we'll receive that update, and hopefully maybe at a
30th of
future
June.
councillor community we can go and inspect some of those solar initiatives as well, if councillors could maybe consider that. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Bella. Speaking for?
Yeah, I'm speaking for the motion. I'd like to pick out a little bit about the SES. At our Anzac Day ceremonies, year in, year out, the SES helps with directing traffic and all that sort of thing. The services I attended, we didn't have that problem. It was raining too much and they were held indoors. But even so, and notwithstanding their performance in the organisation of our community, it different events, I believe is second to none, and I'd like to congratulate them for it.
Thank you, Councillor Bella, and we'll ensure that's passed on through the CEO as well. Do I have any other speakers? Okay, all those in favour? Against? None. The motion is carried. Moving on to 11.2, the Community and Client Services Monthly Review for April. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. No LTIs and major injuries in April. There was only two injuries in the department, both involving finger injuries, so we need to work harder on that. We have allocated a trial security guard at Dudley Denny, unfortunately, after a number of issues, and I think the number I saw after 2 weeks, that person was required 35 times in 2 weeks to intervene in different standards, so it's disappointing, but it means that initiative is working for the protection of our staff and the public. Great to see 144 people attend the Sister City's Mackay Children's Day event. They do a great job. The inaugural Kids Day at the Mac attracted 855 participants, which is fantastic. Glad I wasn't there. Try the 5 campaign has been launched, and I see a couple of councillors who have shown their athletic wares. We've only had 10 complaints about that. The Anzac Day events again were very highly successful, as Councillor Bill said. Even when I was at Finch Hatton, it was a great turnout. So it just gets popular every day. It's a credit to the community. Department budget is on track after 10 months with no concerns that won't be met or bettered. Fortnightly meetings have been held with the 16 students and 2 chaperones for the Sister City Youth Ambassador trip, which is coming up very quickly at the end of June. We spoke about it's the highest numbers we've had for a while, which is fantastic. Great to see the total visitor numbers of Art Space have already exceeded the annual target with 3 months to go. So the staff, Casey over there, is doing a fantastic job. I think everyone will be very happy with that. And the 2 new large digital signs are nearly complete and will be operational in May for use by MSC to provide community messaging. And as we know, and the council endorsed, it was to also promote things like MEC shows and everything to hopefully get a return back. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, CEO. Do you have any questions? Councillor Payton.
Just one question in regards to, I think it's page 58, the Better Community Building Fund. The Mackay Basketball Corporation with their grandstand for 4, saying that they're still waiting for a notification, but I believe they've got notification.
CEO?
Yeah, I believe you're right. When I read that, I apologise. I should have picked it up. I'm pretty sure they have been in recent times awarded that. So we'll change the words on that. Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, I did read it, and I think I had a note to correct it. I'm pretty sure they have been granted their funding in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, so we'll correct that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and just one other matter, it's more of a comment, just in regards to the live streaming. I asked about getting some numbers there, which we've got, and the numbers are encouraging. It's actually going up, so thanks very much to officers for that.
Thank you, Councillor Payton. Councillor May.
Just on page 56, in regards to the Australian South Sea Islander state body, there's a mention in the report there that the final preparations are underway for the registration of this state body. I'm just wondering, perhaps at a future meeting, that we have a bit of an update as to what that purpose is and how that's going to play a role in our community.
Thank you, CEO.
Yeah, if it's okay with you, we'll actually, June's remarkably looking light for briefings, which is a great thing. So we'll chuck something in June if that's okay to spend a little briefing on that.
Excellent. Did you want to add something, Director?
It just may be, we may have to fall into line with the state when they've actually endorsed what their the actual terms of reference for that committee are. They've got the interim ones, and we can do the interim ones, but it may be better to wait until they've got their actual final terms of reference. And that is probably more in the new financial year rather than June.
Okay, we'll be guided by officers on when that information is up to date to come to hand. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Anglett.
Thank you, Chair. Electronic 81 with regards to membership non-active SES groups. A recommendation regarding the future viability of groups is pending review of the SES Unit Strategic Direction Group. My question, Chair, is will councillors have any input into this upcoming strategy? I understand that there's an operational component to that, as in the numbers, but it's my opinion that there's also a community element to that being community livability and embedded resilience within those communities that house SES groups. So I was wondering, will councillors have an opportunity to participate in viability of future groups.
CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. One of the strategic groups things is to look at assets and everything else, which I know you know, so no issues whatsoever. I can give you a commitment that officers will not make a decision on any SES groups without coming back and talk to council. It is one of those things being brought together with the strategic stuff, the assets, and as you know, from part of the strategy group. But once that all that information is, I see anything that comes out of the strategy group is the strategy group's view, but has to come back for full discussion and endorsement, whatever that might mean, to this group at a minimum. And I'm not sure what QFIS's side will do, but that's what my expectation by regional council is. It's a bit like our advisory boards. They have a view, but this group decides what we do.
CEO, just to add to that, because I also just note the numbers of our non-active groups and in particular, you know, some of the most vulnerable areas of our community, if you consider Kamala and Midge Point at opposite ends of our community there. So I'm just wondering, as part of that discussion that council has and an update, and I know I've requested this and I'm pretty sure it's been provided before, is almost a table whereby next to these groups we also understand through QFIS the rural fire membership numbers, and then also the ELOs and the number that we have in each of the parts of the region. And an understanding, are the ELOs members of either the rural fire or the SCS, so that we have an understanding from a disaster response, and that disaster could be a cyclone, that disaster could be flooding in Serena that cuts people off to, you know, Camphor Beach, it could be flooding in, you know, it could be a myriad of different things, or floodways certainly into Midge Point, which we've all experienced at different times as well. Just to give council an understanding, after our recent events of Cyclone Debbie and fires, what is the disaster response snapshot we have in particular our rural and isolated communities of interest? Just wondering if that could be developed and shared with the council and potentially as part of a briefing, just to give us all a snapshot of how we fare and whether that then helps council adequately look at funding or resource our volunteers in those areas, or whether we need to ramp up and look at resourcing. Because at the moment, if we look in isolation, we have no members at Kamala, but I'm confident, and Councillor Bella may be able to confirm, that we have rural fire members there.
Yep.
But we don't have that information. Understanding that's QFIS's information, but that's our community who respond to the LDMG in an event.
So if I may, Councillor May can correct me, she's at the meeting. So part of the new QFIS structural thing was to try to use rural fires, SES, I missed one, and they were looking at possibly, you know, better utilising the mass for their training and everything. Interested to see what budgets come with that. I think that's a great idea, and if it's all right with you, we can collect all that data as part of that as well and bring that forward to make sure. I think it's an excellent point to make. If you can't find someone who wants to be an SES, who else is there that could help and understand? I'm not sure we've actually seen that data before. We've seen SES, but I'm not sure we've seen them. I think that's a great idea. We'll collate all that with QFIS, and hopefully they'll be forthcoming with the data. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, and put all that together as a bit of a picture of, and as you're right, maybe a high priority. Some might have good SES coverage, but not others. Yeah.
And I know, you know, Midge Point have a very healthy rural fire with Bloomsbury, but you know, clearly only 2 members.
And ELO is a good idea. Yeah.
Well, and I think the understanding of the ELO is to understand, if an ELO is a member of the rural fire or the member of the SES, do they hold a position of rank within that, and how does that then inhibit or enable them to carry out the role of an ELO? So, Councillor Bella.
Following on from your comment earlier about Kamala, anecdotally, the further out you go from the city centre, the more, while you might not have formal capability in SES and in rural fires, you do actually tend to have an increased capability in informal disaster response through farmers and landholders in that region. So, to be perfectly honest, one of the reasons that they find it difficult to be involved in those organisations are the requirements of seasonal work and the long hours that many of them do. I would suggest, if we're conducting any sort of review in that regard, it may be interesting to actually just try and gain a bit of an idea of what sort of informal capacity the area has. I think if it has an informal capacity, I think there's less onus in driving hard at those more formalised, and we should probably focus then at the formalised organisations in areas where there's less informal capacity. So it's a matter of trying to work out, do we have complementary capabilities, and where we do, we probably look at areas where we actually don't first. So
CEO, I think that's a good point in understanding what is the capability in our region, whether that be informally or formally, and getting a snapshot of our communities of interest where we know that there is risk.
So we might do first, if it's all right, Your Worship. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just might get
I just
Councillor
wanted,
May's
just wanted to pretense in that conversation that we have to be mindful of any informal network of people.
Mm-hmm.
We lack coordination of that, and as we know, when there is a disaster taking place, that response, the ability to be able to contact the people on the ground is really important. So in whatever it is, solutions that we might come up with, I think we just need to bear that in mind, that when we have people in the control room that are coordinating the response within the disaster, we have to be able to have communications with people on the ground, whether that be through a formal network or an informal network. So we just need to bear that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor May. Councillor Bell?
My suggestion that we do make an assessment of that informal network was for that purpose directly. QFIS figures are that during the fires, in conversations with people in there, that the fire response was 90%, up to 90% informal, as opposed to our formal capacity. So I think if we don't address our informal capacity, we're leaving a big gap. It wasn't 50% as I proposed, it was actually 90%.
And I think CEO obviously engaging with not just SCS and QFIS but our emergency management staff as well, because we do know through the fires there was dialogue happening through the LDCC directly with different communities of interest like Range and Bloomsbury and the like. So okay, so we'll put that together and plan for a briefing then potentially in June when you've got some time before the next high risk season. Councillor England.
Chair, I'll just start with some context that leads to my ultimate question. Historically, as I understand it, Kamala trained once per month. It was the only group that trained once a month to compensate for the fact that they were mostly landowners and did not train at all during the crush period. Within the 6 months period of being able to maintain their competencies, 80% of the 12 SES were rural fire at the time, and that 80% are still members of rural fire but not of SES anymore. I'll move on to just back to electronic page 81. I'm sort of wondering the relevance of the non-active groups table. But actually, first of all, I note Midge Point. So about 12 months ago, we recognised it's more like 8 months ago, we recognised that Midge Point had 2 volunteers, but then we removed those 2 volunteers. And I note they're back now. Are those 2 active, are they two current volunteers at Midge Point? As in, if we rang them up, they would have the current competencies to be activated.
Theo, do you need to take that on notice?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know straight off. I can come back offline if you like.
Cool. So the reason I bring up the relevance, I understand. So Armstrong Beach has 5 volunteers and Camplin Beach has 2 volunteers. I don't dispute that. I believe that to be correct. I note that we're listing that there's vehicles allocated to those groups, but they're currently at other groups, and I understand have been so for some time. So I'm just, what are we doing with this non-active group thing? Are we just saying there's intent there, or are we just reporting on something that doesn't exist?
CEO, that's a fair question.
Yeah. Good question. I think we've been reporting it while the strategic group's trying to work out all the assets, and I know this has taken far too long. And it's a two party joint effort, the strategic stuff. So I think what we're doing, in all honesty, Councillor, is reporting it, waiting for all this information to come in and then be clear on what we want to do after that. And I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but I think that's what we're doing. I think we're trying to give basic information, but I'm not sure it's doing any good while we're just waiting for this panacea of strategy to come, which has taken longer than we expected.
Councillor Bella.
While we're looking into that, I would be interested in if it has run past me and I haven't noticed, I do apologise. But I'd be interested to see with our active members and that sort of thing, I'd be interested to see historically, just how active members were, to give us context. Like the people on our books, as Councillor Inglet said, if we called them, are they up to date and whatever? And I'd like to contrast that, with how it's been over a period of time, a considerable period of time. And the idea being, I believe, to see whether we're actually improving and whether we are counting people that are there and actually able to attend, as opposed to people that were on our books and not. And I think until we get context, historical context, we can't really tell whether the organisation has improved or whatever. It's just a thing that I would like to see, to be honest, if we're doing that.
And Councillor Miller, what date? Would you like that from the start of from when this council was formed, or how?
I don't know. I think it needs to go.
About 2015, that's a 4-year span.
4-year span would be good, yeah.
I think the information we're collecting, Your Worship, from the strategy group, I'm not sure I think we went 5 years from memory. I think we went 5 years. So I'm whether it's exact that level of detail, Councillor Bella, that's what we're trying to capture, all the data. And I think it's a fair point. Councillor Inglet's raised it since he's been on council, is we need, the data's the data. We need to understand through trends and information, have we got the right groups with the right numbers? Is there a gap? Because everywhere else in our business we do traffic lights and we work out whether we're on track, off track or whatever else. This is a bit more complex when there's 2 parties involved, with QFIS as well, but we need to understand how we're going and understanding, and rightly or wrongly, what we're working on. So the point that was made before about training, QFIS are now looking at multiple layers of a membership for SES. So you can actually be a member without having to learn how to jump off of ropes now. We identified that a long time ago. That means people who don't want to go to that level, but might just want to man the radios, that's very sensible. And we're hoping something sensible comes out of all this. So what the data that Councillor Bella asked, I think will be captured in everything else. We'll make sure we get all that and make sure we try to do that. So that's coming to June's meeting of the strategy group. So we're probably talking July or something before it gets to council.
Okay. So if we could propose as an action then out of the discussion is that a briefing comes to council in July that captures all of that information that we've discussed today. Okay. Councillor May.
I just wanted to add to that. It's the numbers are the numbers, but it's really about the ability to respond is the key component that we should not forget here, that in any disaster, it is being the readiness of people to be able to respond and our coverage of our entire Mackay Regional Council area. So I think the numbers are one thing, but that ability of the units is paramountly important.
The skills and training they have. Yeah.
Councillor Inglet.
Chairman, I just want to finish my line of questioning in order, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, and I've lost my train of thought. It's broken twice. Ultimately, what I'm getting at is, we previously asked for active versus reserve because in the numbers, it can say the numbers, and I'm aware that this has been throughout all of SES history, that the numbers don't particularly mean that there's an individual turning up week in and week out. It means that they're maintaining their currency, which means they're available for activation. So you don't have to turn up week in, week out. So, but it does recognise the reason it's important to understand the difference, in my view, the difference between active and reserve operators. And a reserve operator might be someone on maternity leave that's going to take longer than the standard period of time to maintain their competency, et cetera, is that, they're the people. So that indicates what training resources are needed from week to week, not necessarily what's needed, so you don't necessarily have to provide for 168 people week in, week out. So I think that's important. So I've asked, for the different, can we have a difference in our report between active and reserve. There's nothing wrong with reserve. A reserve is just as activatable as someone that's turning up week in, week out. So that's one thing I'm asking.
So, sorry, Councillor England, just to clarify then, your question is, you would like to distinguish in the membership of active groups reporting what is active and what is reserve participation.
Yes, because there's only one other thing after that, that's archived, and that means that person's extended past the period that they can no longer be a member.
CEO, you want to respond to that?
Is there a definition of reserve that's clear to everybody? Because what happens with all these things, and that's a question, what does a reserve mean? Does a reserve mean to you different to me? So the definition of what a reserve is key in this?
Question.
Yes, you can.
So a reserve's defined in the guide, the doctrine, and it's part of it. It's deeply entrenched in the practice of culture. If a member doesn't attend for a certain period of time, they're called up and said, you have this much time to re-attend, or you put on, you're archived. So a reserve person may be someone who goes on extended leave, someone that goes through maternity leave, but their skills are still required or usable, just they will be away for a period of time with a good reason.
That I think we've captured.
But it doesn't mean that they're turning up week in, week out, and that changes the relation to the amount of qualified trainers required and all that sort of stuff. So with regards to my questioning around, do we need what's the relevance of this, that part? So through my questioning over the last 18 months, we've seen my questions result in Kamala, not in this particular order, but Kamala being removed off the active group list, and then Midge Point. We've seen Armies and Camp Beach removed off there as well. And so now, I suppose our point of truth is that we have 4 active groups within the Mackay region. And so, leading on from what the Chair was saying earlier about either a memo or report about, why is, we all know that there is a decline in volunteering across the country and across the world. That's great. I don't care about that. That stuff, and that stuff's in all sorts of papers all over the place. What are other factors, affecting the decline in operation of the number of groups that we have? What are the possible reasons we've seen that decline? And is that second non-active group thing relevant?
Okay, Councillor, I think that's complementary to Councillor Bella's request about the trend, because obviously the data and the trend would be influenced by the factors that are having an impact in the declining number of volunteers, and so we'll request that be included in that report and briefing that comes to Council. Councillor Bonaventura.
Just in relation to reserves, I would also, obviously, as Councillor Angus said, there is a definition of what a reserve is, but you'd want to make sure that they are at a fair level of training, because the last thing you need to do is get the phone, call on a reserve who doesn't understand what your current systems are, and you put more stress on the educated SES volunteer to try and sort of babysit that person through. So, they've either got to be active, in my opinion, like reserve can be for a short period of time, but I think once you've got an extended period, I think those people would be considered no longer active, because their skills and their understanding of what current regulations would, I believe, be too far out of date.
Councillor England.
I respect the councillor's personal opinion, but the definition is defined in the Code of Practice, and you'll find that a lot of your reserve members are members with experience in excess of 5 years that have done all the training. They're qualified in everything and no longer need to turn up week in, week out. They just need to turn up once a month to maintain their competencies, and that's their interest now. They're highly valuable, usually leaders, and are highly competent, usually.
Okay, so Councillor England, so what I get from that is, I think in the briefing, CEO, if you can outline probably an introduction, I think, into the membership structure of the SES and the definition of reserve, and then the quantifying across our groups, how many are active, not active, and what's required of them to give some surety.
So to take your worship, is the data that we're spending some money on to get for the strategic includes where are people called out, who's going out, who's got the skills to go out, which is the key point on how many groups is the right number. And it'd be hypothetical, some of it, but So if it's okay, we're going to take first draft of the raw data to the strategic group in early June. How about we set a briefing for mid to late June just for that data for council, because I don't think the strategic group is going to see the first draft of the data and go, we've fixed everything. That's impossible. So how about we get all that data with what people have asked, come and have a briefing with council of just that data, and then we can align where both bits are going to make sure we're on the right path with whatever we want to do, so that we get absolute clarity about what we're measuring.
Councillor Bell.
What we're doing this, look, I understand the concept of team, and I think an SES unit is, it's essential that you work as a team, that you know each other. And obviously, the more contact you have, it's one thing to be competent, it's another thing to know how your team meshes together. So, and we're talking about them as though, the individuals, as though they're distant. I would like to actually see, maybe we ask the individuals in our units what they think about the idea of how they see as to whether someone that turns up once a month is actually an integral response to a team. I've seen it both in sport and in medicine, where you get used to knowing what a person's going to do before they do it. It's all very well to be competent, but to know the people you're working with and to trust them is important. So I actually think that, we always talk about ownership and whatever. We should probably actually ask the people in our units what they think is a valuable sort of way of doing it. Is once a week what they require? Once a fortnight? Is once a month enough? If someone is in reserve, should they attend for a block period just to get to know the other people there? Because you're in a personal dynamic, to be honest, in any sort of stressful situation is massively important. And I saw it myself down in Kamala, where we were stuck in that fire. You knew what the other bloke was going to do because you worked with him before. Now, this is on an informal basis. So surely in a formal situation, it's extremely important. And I think it's something, if we are going to conduct a review into it, we're kind of forgetting the people that are actually on the ground.
That are participating. Okay,
let the CEO
I'm going to let the
answer.
CEO, because we've spent a lot of time on this, I'm going to let the CEO respond, and then, sorry, Councillor G, is your question around this? Okay, thank you. I'll let you respond, please, CEO, and then we might wrap this discussion up to see if there's any other questions pertaining, but I think it's been a very good discussion. So do you want to, can you?
I think,
synthesise
I think what everybody's asked for, I think we're doing in some way or the other, probably a little bit ad hoc. But I think the data collection that we're getting on that, which is getting out of the system of where are people going, I think the flexible membership option that QFIS have started takes to a little bit point of Councillor Bella. Right now, council surveying people who don't work for us has to be done with QFIS. So that first thing they'd say to us is, can we get all the data together first?
They've done that.
Yeah, and that's the data collection, is they have done a survey some time ago, and I'm sure Council was involved in that. So we're collecting all this data. I think if we can use the next 4 to 6 weeks to collect the data, let the strategy group have a look at it, brief the council of that data, and then set a path that's aligned with the strategic group. But anything that we're missing out of that group, we agree as a group in late June that we'll go off and do.
I think that's a good way forward, and then councils understand what the gaps are and we can provide input into those gaps.
Yep.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with that? Great. Okay, Councillor G.
To the chair.
It's fine.
Work conditions at the library with the engagement of the security staff. Have we had any feedback? Has their work environment improved?
CEO.
I'll only talk about my feedback that I've got. So when the director and the manager came and saw me around the concerns they had, I think I made the decision within 5 minutes. I went down personally just to see the staff, not to tell them that, just explain that their welfare and the welfare of our public is a high priority for us. And all I got was overwhelmingly positive support that we realised that they were in an environment that was higher risk and that we'd reacted quickly to that. So a credit to the manager and the director for bringing it to my attention. We've done it. It's been overwhelmingly positive. I think we're actually getting feedback from the public who use that library regularly. Thank you as well, because I think sometimes it's not our staff that are intimidated. There's other people having a go at other members, public. So the feedback's been overwhelming policy. I think, and I mentioned to you that we're doing a 3-month trial to collect all the data and work it out and come back to you. And right now, if based on the current information, I think we might have to install this permanently. Whether we do that and employ our own person versus using an outsider, we'll have to determine at the end of the trial.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, excellent. And I was down there the other day, and it was congratulations to the security staff. They're doing an amazing job and blending nicely, and but helping people too, which was wonderful to see. So, yeah, great. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, just a quick one. With these 2 new large digital signs, the report says it'll be used for doing council-related messaging. If a non-profit group approached council to put up a community event that they might be having, what would be the response?
CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor, the only reason I'm smiling is that when we brought this project to council, we were very clear at the start that we would use it for solely council messaging and for, I think we gave figures that in other regions where they'd put some signs up and started promoting their entertainment precinct, like the MEC, there was a 5 to 15% increase in revenue based on that promotion. Each of those signs have traffic of around 22,000 vehicles per day at both. So one of the major reasons you supported us in this was around, we think we can gain more revenue at the MEC and promote our wares better. So that was the first one. And I think we all talked about messaging around cyclone season, messaging around, I personally think it's great to show photos of, if we start building a mountain bike track, give people an update. Every 2 weeks, give an update on the MARC project and things like that. Very simple, tell them what we're doing. We were very clear at the start, and the procedure that we've written, which you actually, councillors asked for when we signed off on this for a procedure, I'm pretty sure it's the Deputy Mayor who asked for it. We were very clear that we're going to start with us. And if over time, once it's all running, there was other than requests, we would talk to you about that. But the procedure we wrote at the start, which you signed off on, was very clear that it's about council first. We'll get it all running, make sure it's maximising what we want it for, and if then there's an opportunity after that, we'd talk to you all. So the answer would be no at the start.
Thank you, CEO. And I think, I mean, to add to that, when you look at the communications of council, from everything from dump vouchers through to art space, the MEC, Sugar Shed, all of the other opportunities we have to promote what's happening at council, Greenmount, as well as just disaster readiness and the like. There's a lot of messaging that those boards can be utilised for. So we look forward to seeing that rolled out.
I think also, Mayor, I think you also mentioned it, that when we talked about this, we were very clear we do not want to compete in the commercial space with other operators. That's not our role. We're using ratepayers' money. So it was solely around our messaging and making sure we don't in any way impact the commercial market. That was what we agreed on at the start, and that was our clear intention. Now, whether the community group is impacted or not is something we need to assess. Some of those community groups might be paying someone else to use their sign, so that means we'd be in the commercial space. So we need to work through all that.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor May.
Just a question on the Better Community Building Fund. I note in the report that there's 17 completed projects, but there are 6 that are not. I'm just wondering whether we can report on the time frame to completion. They give some reasons why things have been delayed, but having some time frames on when those projects are likely to be completed would be useful.
CEO, we can add that to next month.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think that's very sensible. And those 6 get off the list.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, so can I have someone please move the Community Client Services report for the month of April? So Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Englert. Councillor May, do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Great report, as you can see from the report, lots of activity happening in the community services area. Couple of draw-outs. I think Unlimited Choices in Serena was the youth event just the Friday prior to the school holidays. The Mayor, myself, Councillor Payton, Councillor Mann attended that event. 200 participants in that event, which was fantastic. The weather was a bit iffy, so it was really great, well coordinated, a whole heap of services there providing support as well, so that was fantastic. The Anzac Day services throughout our region, and the role that council plays in supporting the RSL across something like 24 services across our region is no mean feat, and our staff do it extremely well year in, year out, and it's great to see. I think the other thing that I wanted to draw out was just the numbers at the museum, the Serena Museum in particular. Over 100 people visiting the museum last month, and I think that, you know, it's obviously we're coming into the tourist season again now. We've established our presence down there as the Mackay Region Visitor Information Centre, and I'm assuming there's a flow-on effect to that throughout the Field of Dreams down there. So overall, I think the communication side of the client services report, we asked for that inclusion of the monitoring of the online records to see who and how many people were listening in and watching. So that's fantastic. It's something that we'll monitor going forward. And I think just overall a great effort. Lots of things happening in the community space.
Right.
Oh, sorry, just one more thing I did forget. The My Community newsletter is a new initiative of the department, and I think that will prove to be very beneficial. It'll be interesting to see what the join-up rate to that is. We're forecasting to put events and information out on a fortnightly basis, so I think it'll be interesting to see the take-up of that and the sort of information that we can get out to the community.
Great, thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Casey, speaking for.
No, just sorry, speaking for. Along with yourself and myself, we had the Council and Community Day in April. A very good day. We covered a wide variety of topics. Started the farmers markets, then did a bit of drainage down at the Coddle or Shelford Creek. Mackay went to the museum, also to the community gardens out there at the near the base hospital, and also some footpath inspections, and met a couple of local businesses. We also had briefings with Mackay Netball and with Sunday Branch and Netball, the same place. And also it was very, very interesting to go over to Dr Davison, the Coral Sea Clinical Research Institute, just to see how he's kicked that off and how the trips to Boston and that are starting to pay dividends there. And just to listen to him and the work that he's going to do with that is very, very interesting. And the flow-on effects for our region here should be very, very good. But all in all, it was a great day had by all, and I'd just like to thank Madonna and Gillian for helping organise that on my behalf.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Casey. It was a great day. So, other speakers? Councillor Bonner, speaking for?
For the motion, thank you. Just endorse Councillor Casey's words in relation to the Council Community Day. I particularly enjoyed seeing the Shelford Creek drainage works. I think that's been a project that's been a long time coming, and will reap benefits in the future for flooding within or to prevent flooding in that area. The other one was just in relation to the, I note the community use of our the public use of our Jubilee Community Centre. It notes there 71 groups used it for the month of May. I think, you know, that's been a real positive. Before we had that, you know, I don't know where those groups met. Some came up here. It just gives community groups, small and large, an opportunity to have a good premises to take on meetings. Finally, just in relation to the use of technology, I noticed in the community development when Councillor Walker and I attended the Progress Association's development workshop that this isn't the only meeting that was broadcast live. Our words that day were also broadcast live, Councillor Walker, and 355 people did partake in that, so that was interesting. So we've taken it up to a new level, I believe, so thank you.
Fantastic, thanks, Councillor Bonaventure. Other speakers? With the motion there that we officers' recommendations be adopted with the report, all those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Moving on to 11.3, and we do have some perceived conflicts of interest here. So we will have some people moving in and out of the room over the course of the discussion with this report. So Councillor G has declared a perceived conflict of interest, and 11.3, being a member of the IMSF Club, will leave the room. Councillor G, thank you. Okay, so councillors, we are working through this with. Sorry, Madonna's got it up there. So obviously we are considering the community grants applications for round 3. and there have been a number of grants assessed, but we have separated out some pieces to allow, because we have two councillors away today. If all three leave the room for everything, we don't have a quorum. So we've had to separate pieces out to be able to allow councillors to vote where appropriate. And the executive officers provided that advice to us today. Councillor Bonaventura.
Could I ask for just one minor adjustment to the report, please? On page 92, Councillor May's name is not on the list of people that were in this. That has been updated.
It's been updated?
Yeah, it's been sorted.
Okay.
Has been sorted.
Thank you,
very
CEO.
much.
Thank you for that pick-up, Councillor Bonaventura. Okay, so we've got Councillor Casey has declared a perceived conflict of interest, and Councillor Walker as well, in relating to Mackay West Rotary Club. So if we can ask you gentlemen to leave for this portion, and then we'll get you back in. Is my understanding? Yep. So councillors, we are just considering as part of this grant program funding the Mackay West Rotary Club, of which Councillor Walker, Councillor Casey have conflict of interest due to their membership. So we're just considering this item of the grant list, and then we'll get them back in to consider the rest of the list. Thank you, Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Unanimously.
We need time to get a coffee.
Thanks, councillors. Okay, Councillor Payton now has to leave due to a conflict of interest, perceived conflict of interest with association of his wife with BMX Queensland. Thank you, Councillor Payton. So we are now going to vote on the recommendation around the Serena and District BMX Club be granted $10,000. Do I have a move? Councillor Englert, seconded by Councillor May. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Can get Councillor Payton back in.
Get your coffee.
Just for Councillor's benefit, Councillor G has agreed to leave for the entire report.
Yeah, he didn't have a choice on that.
No, he didn't. So, okay, so we have before us there the residual applications. The funding be approved through the grants program for the following groups. I'm not going to read them all out, but you've received them. So moved by Councillor May and seconded by Councillor Casey. All those in favour?
I just would like to speak to it.
Oh, sorry, Councillor May, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so
report.
Look, a great round of applications, 27 applications, totalling over $140,000. Obviously, we couldn't fund them all. We had a bucket of money of around $88,000. You'll see in the report there, we did go $19.20 over budget, but our Director assures me that we can cover that, so that is fantastic. And look, the list is on the board there, a great array of projects throughout our council area. They've come from a vast majority of community groups who have applied through the community grants process for some fantastic works that are happening, as well as events that are happening across our region in the coming months. So it's always a challenging exercise to be able to score those grants and then come together as a group to be able to then determine the recipients of them. This is our final round for this financial year, and once we've passed our budget, we will be looking to hold the next round, I think, in September of the next financial year. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor May. Councillor Bonaventura?
Yeah, just to endorse Councillor May's words, but also to say that, following the previous round, I was a little bit critical of some of the applications not having enough detail. Can I say that a lot of those groups have improved their process and their budgets are getting a lot better. Still, in my opinion, a bit more of a way to go, because as more and more people do apply for these grants, it's our responsibility to be, a little more discerning in relation to who gets money and who doesn't. But a lot better. As Councillor May said, it was a lot of work in doing that. We had a shortened time frame to do the preparation, and do the assessments, but all in all, very happy with the result. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Bonaventura. And a broad range of community groups there represented across both geographically and the breadth of services they deliver to the community, which is great to see. Okay, now I will ask for the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. I'll get Councillor G back in, please. Thanks, Councillor G. 11.4, which is the March budget review. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is our third quarterly reforecast for the year. As we near close to the end of the year, information becomes more accurate. It's always the quarterly reforecast that we make probably the most changes. In summary, we are now forecasting using end of March data a deficit of 1.7 million from the original budget surplus of 480k. This is primarily and pretty well solely due to a one-off contract matter payment that was not envisaged when the original budget was set, and although unfavourable for this year, it will be highly favourable for future years. I'd just like to add that this reforecast was on the end of March data and things are moving quickly and changing, so we'll give you more update in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We were just advised last week about some revenue that might come in prior to the year for the waste levy that we weren't anticipating that may actually put the budget back into surplus. So we'll just keep, that was not expected, so we'll keep giving you an update, but this is the update at the end of March. Overall, operating revenue has increased by about 3.8 million on the back mainly of funding timing, and expenses have increased by 5.9, therefore giving you a deficit, with most of that 5.91 or a large proportion due to the one-off contract matter. There are numerous adjustments to the capital. We've set this process in place with you now for several years where we have complete transparency on all jobs and give you explanation of that. We've continued that on, that's why the report's so big. But I think it is a very good process in terms of making sure we're accountable, and if we haven't met a budget, there's a lot of accountability goes into understanding why that is so we can better in the future.
Thank you, CEO. CEO, I have a question that this report is appropriate not being in confidential given the contract discussion?
We're adjusting the budget.
Okay.
It's legislative about the quarterly reviews.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
We haven't given you sensitive data.
Okay,
So
so
we've only
it's,
talked
sorry,
about-
it's the high, can I just clarify then? It's the high level budget line of the entire department then?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
thank
And
you.
it's also, Your Worship, just talk about contract generally.
Yes.
Don't give any specifics.
Thank
So
you.
if we're given that detail, I totally agree with you.
Yes, okay, yeah.
I've
Thank
just got
you,
a
Councillor
couple of questions, Madam Mayor, if you wish.
Yes.
Just on page, where are we? Page 99, and we've got the Leisure Bridge intersection. It's got there the funds required to address customer concerns in relation to traffic control. Did we not scope the traffic control inclusions into that project? It just seems like a bit of a strange one to me.
CEO.
I might have to pass it on to the acting director.
Yeah, or the, the corporate services directors sort of.
It's more in relation to traffic calming rather than traffic control, if that makes sense. So it was an emerging project.
So which bridge is it?
It says Leisure Bridge.
Oh, Leisure Court. So that was based on a, if I may, sorry,
Yes.
it was based on a complaint received from netball and also the local federal member of parliament regarding congestion from right turn movement. So it's an emerging project rather than not being a scope issue. It's an additional 40,000 for an island to be installed to make sure left out movements only occur rather than right out movements onto Boundary Road, causing congestion and queuing back within the Leisure Court area.
Okay.
It's just that the traffic control, I thought we were talking people rather than calming.
Yeah, the word should have been better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's controlled and then it takes away the right movement, I suppose. So.
No problem.
Thank you.
And my second question is in regards to that similar project, Casey Avenue there, and the $448,502 additional funds towards that project. Is there a particular reason that it's gone over budget so much?
CEO.
I'll pass that to the director of capital.
Yeah, I'll just have to. Can I come take that off
Can-
and come back with the exact detail for the overexpend on that project.
Yeah, sorry, can you just clarify the electronic page? Sorry, Councillor May.
Page 99, yeah. So it's in the existing projects and the additional funds required to finalise the Works for Queensland projects, mainly Casey Avenue.
So it's under Works for Queensland. Okay. Are you comfortable
Yeah, that'd be
where
fine.
you get that
Yeah.
information circulated?
If I may, without the detail will come back to you,
Yeah,
Councillor Mack. I know when that project got towards the end, there was a timing issue and we made a decision, if you remember, Director, that we made a decision around the asphalting, and there was a timing matter where a company was going to do it and then decided they weren't going to do it and went to another region. And we made a decision there and there to get it done to reduce the impact on some activities in that area. We made that call because it would have been another several weeks, and as it turned out, it rained straight away after that, so luckily we got it done. We made that call. It wasn't 440,000.
No,
it was
just
That was only about 70,000.
Yeah.
So the 440, I just want to clarify, I think we had some additional depth we needed to dig out around the roundabout from memory, but I'll come back to you with the exact detail.
Okay,
So yeah, the asphalting was a component, but it was only around the 70.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get that information out of session. Any other questions? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, on page 105, under net result, there's the waste landfill remediation impacts of 17.5 million and the loss on the disposal of 8 million. I was just wondering whether give us a little bit of detail on those.
CEO.
Lovely Director, is that one?
Yes, Director.
Through you, Madam Chair. The waste remediation landfill is to do with the liability for future waste remediation works. We've done some more work on it this year on getting consultants in to give us better estimates of that going forward. There's also been a change in legislation on what remediation work is required. So we've had to increase the provisions. So it's preparing ourselves for year end. These adjustments usually come through at year end. We're just trying to recognise them early because it does affect the net result, which affects our balance sheet. So we're just trying to bring them to account on the information we know today. In relation to the loss on disposal, again, we've got more work to do in terms of year end, but that's just an indicative figure of what it usually is around when we capitalise assets, writing off assets that are currently on our books. So it's accounting adjustments for year end.
Okay, thank you, Director.
Just to follow up on that, am I right in saying there's about 40 odd million already for waste remediation, and this is on top of that?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're talking about a figure of something like $60 million.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
That's a hell of a high figure, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we had a briefing a little while ago, Council. We went through all our old sites and everything, and I think the liability around this, I actually agree with the legislation around this about making sure councils adequately provide for it in their liability register, so because you have to do it. It's not as if you have a choice. So I actually agree with it. You don't like $17 million adjustments, but the fact is it's truthful. I think I'm sure you were here for the briefing with the manager of waste, and we're probably ahead of most other councils understanding our sites and the costs associated. The only problem is the costs are bloody high. So, but at least we're accounting for them, and I think it does also tell us going forward, councils going forward, is as we build assets, waste and everything else, we need to understand what the overall long-term costs of they are, and whether there's other opportunities. Waste energy is something that might be a bit more expensive up front. You can get an energy outcome, but you don't have that liability later on. So I think this just teaches me that any decision we make around those sort of things, we need to understand what the real cost is, not just the immediate, the long-term costs, because that's a big hit on our liability.
And ongoing, which I think the Waste Manager is doing, is ongoing monitoring of any innovation or opportunity there is as well in new methods and technologies. How we remediate. Okay, that's great. Councillor Walker?
I just had another question.
Sure.
On page 96, fees and charges, the decrease in development application and assessment fees, I thought we were travelling fairly well this year, but it appears as though we're still coming in below budget there.
CEO. Thank you, Director. You have all the answers this morning. It's fantastic.
I believe it's in relation to a refund of previously received development application fees, so it affects this year's budget.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Great. Other questions?
Just,
Councillor Bonaventura.
just on page 100, I noticed that there's 100,000 for critical hazards at the Serena Sugar Shed. Just a quick, and that's good because I had an idea they needed doing, so it's good to see that they're being done. But
yes,
we've got 30,000 out of that 100 in this year. What's the other 74 out of that?
30k with balance deferred to 1920. CEO, can you respond to that?
Yeah, so we undertook an audit, councillor, of the facilities a little while ago that highlighted some urgent and immediate needs around compliance, around the fume cupboard, the storage of alcohol, and a few other things. So we undertook a comprehensive audit with the latest standards, which they're moving every day. So some of the audit results in terms of what they found, I was concerned enough to make a decision on the spot to get those rectified. So some of those orders had lead time and everything else. We did have some money in the budget as well for the Serena Sugar Shed, but it wasn't necessarily around this. So what you're seeing is adjustments for what we're going to do this year, and some of it will carry into next year. So that's what the adjustments are. So some of the things will get delivered and you actually won't complete it till next year. So we're just moving the money across years.
30,000 is for the critical electrical works. Is that what it is? Critical works?
Am I correct in saying the 100,000 is for all the works, but some will be delivered up until 30 June and some will be delivered in the next half of the year?
Bottom.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Bonaventura, other questions? No? Okay, so we'll put the changes identified in the March budget review, and thank you, Director, for your comprehensive responses today, be adopted and become the approved amended budget for Council. Do I have someone move? Councillor Payton, seconded by Councillor Walker. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Payton?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'd like to congratulate the accounting department and council for the work that's gone into this report with numerous unders, overs, project deferrals, delays, and projects being brought forward. So they've definitely got the eye on the ball to keep this all in hand. Predicted increase in revenue of 3.8 million is offset with an increase in operating expenses of 5.9 million. So this will take our original predicted surplus of 480,000 to a deficit of 1.7 million. Although in saying that, we've still got a couple of months and we've already heard of some changes coming, so let's keep an eye on the space.
Thank you, Councillor Payton. Other speakers? Put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Favour, thank you. Carried. Moving on, 11.5, adoption of the Audit Committee policy and charter. So moved, Councillor Payton, seconded by Councillor Englert. This was a fairly straightforward and updated, and I just want to acknowledge and thank for the track changes as well. Makes it much easier to understand what's changing and being updated. So do I have, I won't take it, well, we've sort of moved it to take any questions, so it was a bit quick off the mark there. Did anyone have any questions around it? No, okay. So we'll put that the officer's recommendation be adopted. All those in favour? I should have asked you, did you want to speak to that? Okay, it's my first meeting in 18 months. Sorry, Councillor Payton. Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 11.6, the adoption of council policies. And first I will ask, are there any questions? Thank you, Councillor Mayer.
Just one question in relation to the strategy framework. The scoping, it doesn't exactly spell this out, but just if you can tell me, the scoping of any strategy that's a council strategy, will that scope be determined by officers, councillors, or together?
CEO.
If it's a strategy, it will be together. So as per the framework, officers will probably do some legwork, as you know, and talk to councillors through that process, the framework. The only reason I hesitate, it's a strategy, not a policy. Sometimes we have administrative policies which get done through the officers, but from a strategic point of view on a strategy, it will definitely be in joint and obviously the ultimate sign-off from that strategy has got to be the council.
Did you want to outline anything further there, CEO? This has been discussed at length and briefed and circulated as well. So.
I think there's all I would say is there's a lot of good work being done by the department. We have had a briefing just recently. We have talked about this for a while, so it's good to bring that up and get a framework. You know, we've had some issues in the past around probably the communication from staff through to councillors around setting off on a path. We've made it clear out of this that you can't do that. You need to come back and make sure we engage with councils right at the start and get them involved. So hopefully the policy puts a framework that we stick to that now and avoid any confusion that was happening in the past.
So I just have a question that once this policy is adopted, that obviously SLPT through the middle management forum, they'll be made aware, or they are aware of this change to the way in which, it's not really a change, it's more the formalisation, I think, of how we plan to develop and implement strategy.
Yeah, absolutely, and we actually want to be more proactive. We know there's 4 strategies that were for this financial year that we needed to do for the next 12 months, so we want to be transparent right from the start and say these are the strategies we're working on, be clear up front and make sure there is no sidestepping in that process, so that will definitely occur.
Okay, thank you. And I think it also gives the public a very transparent view of how we're developing any strategy that council's embarking on as well. Do I have any other questions of the CEO? Would someone like to move the council adopt the corporate strategies policy? Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor May. Councillor Walker, do you wish to speak?
Very straightforward.
Straightforward. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. 11.7, petition, construction of footways, Evan, McIntyre, Christie and Scanlon Streets at South Mackay. And this is about receiving a petition that was requested 13th of March, I believe, that's come through. So, and it's, apologies, as I move down. Oh, sorry, Madonna, you've got it up there. And the council notes these outcomes. So if you want to give us an overview there, CEO.
Thank you. Just very quickly, it's obviously self-explanatory. We're trying to get back around the petition. I think the point I would like to make that we might want to look forward in the future is this council, based on the pure policies we have in place around intervention levels and everything else, it's pretty clear what our recommendation here is around the request. What this council has done though very well is we allocated school footpath program of $400,000 a year where we use that. So there is a suggestion in here that maybe as an internal organisation we have a look about something like this, whether there's, I hate to use the word buckets, but there's an isolated amount of money that we could look at going forward in our budgets, capital budgets, to look at things like this, because under the footpaths for the schools, very important, we're always struggling to meet under the hierarchical. So there is a suggestion here that maybe we could discuss with councillors going forward whether they're interested in looking at that. If that is the case, Your Worship, I'm happy to maybe set up a briefing or something where we can discuss about those options to go forward, because that is one of the key messages. We think under the current process it's pretty straightforward, but maybe there is something we wish to consider in future of the way we handle these things.
Any further questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor
So
Casey.
how do we go about that? We just want to do exactly the same as we've done with the school one. We just bring that up at a later date.
Yeah, we probably have to work, councillor, on a bit of a framework. The school one was, we agreed and then we sent out to all the schools. They wrote back, had to fill out a sort of template to give us reasoning, and we used a priority, which seems to have gone quite well. I've got to say, it looks very good. When somebody asks us, they go, well, you made year 3, and you can give them some surety. We'd have to do some framework on that, councillor. So when I say about a briefing, I would suggest at the briefing we put up a draft framework of how that might look, what a sensible number might be, and we can have a discussion about that and see whether that's something you're interested in. We'd bring that forward in the briefing.
I support it quite hard.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Walker.
Do we have any idea on what the school's program is costing and whether the demand is far exceeds what money we've allocated to it? And if that's the case, is there a fair bit of disappointment at times, or are we satisfying the needs to this point in time?
CEO?
This is our second year of that program, 18-19. So we have one more year to go. So what we agreed with you all that we'd do 3 years at $400,000 per year. We've allocated, so we had a lot of schools come in. Everything's always oversubscribed. But my understanding of what we've done, and we've come back and talked to you about, is what we've allocated. Those schools are very happy that they have some surety about it's coming. So we've already set the schools for next year, which is that program we set. And the numbers seem to be pretty close to what we envisaged, around that 400. I think one was a little bit over, but we've handled that. I think it's something we need to discuss in the next 12 months about, do we want to continue that? Is 400 the right number? I think of all the things we do, similar to community grants, we'll always be oversubscribed, but we don't seem to have, I'm not hearing a high level of disappointment that a lot of people have missed out. I think there'll be the schools that have missed out, or they might have asked us for 3 footpaths, we've given them 1 in this process. I think we have to have a discussion before next year's budget on whether we want to continue this. I personally would be recommending we do. I think it's been very successful. I think the process has been clear. I think the outcomes are clear. And if you can give someone some surety that you made year 3 and it's coming, I think that's really been a good process for us. So I would be recommending it to continue forward. I'm pretty sure we'll never run out of list of work. It's just about how we work through those priorities.
Just to follow on,
Yes.
is there any sort of dilemma with getting the priorities right for the schools as opposed to all the other community? Is there any sort of trouble actually prioritising, you know, whether that work should in fact be done at the school or should be done somewhere else? Or
Theo?
So what we did is, by isolating that 400,000, is we pretty well didn't compete. The school footpaths are now not competing with the rest. So the rest is now just as part of our normal processes. I can't remember the number. Graham would remember, the manager would remember that, what the number is for next year, but we've got footpaths in next year's capital budget, but also in the 400,000, we can tell you what we've isolated for schools. So we've almost taken that problem away by separating the bucket out.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if I may.
Yes.
The school projects would never qualify under our prioritisation model for the trunk footpaths. So that was basically the logic for them to be excluded. You know, it was purely a community service obligation, I suppose it was treated as, to provide those footpaths, because they won't actually get funding under the truck hierarchy prioritisation.
If I may, for staff, it's this whether we agree with the bucket being separated or not, it's good for us to have some surety around that. We set a process and we set the priorities, and it's just then project execution. So it's been I think it's been a highly successful program, to be honest. We're getting a lot of positives back from the schools about the process and the surety. There was the odd school who didn't write back to us in the timeline. You know, we just need to understand that it's almost a one-off. You get a chance, and we set the next 3 years. We just need to make sure if we run it again, we make sure we communicate with them that this is the time to tell us if you've got something.
Okay, so this one, just to remind councillors, was specifically focused on safety for aged resident populations, which we have obviously spread all over our community. And I know we've had requests, particularly in Serena and other areas before, around footpath upgrades. So I just wanted clarified that obviously our accessibility policy covers off on obviously standards, but it doesn't necessarily prioritise certain areas, does it? No.
So purely, if I may, again, purely under our footpath program, we're working on the trunk hierarchy. Effectively, all other projects fall under the general works program. Mackay Street already has a footpath. This was been more, I believe, on a exercise or whatever basis, and then the general population access on a sealed footway. Footways are unsealed in a number of areas there, but it is trafficable, doesn't meet our intervention levels. There's issues with tree removal, utility adjustments, which would need to be made to provide for a standard footpath.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, so the officer's recommendation up there is that the principal petitioner be advised of what's been outlined here today, and in particular around some of those challenges and around the intervention levels that they will continue to be undertaken as well. Do someone like to move? Councillor Casey, seconded by Councillor Payton. Do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. The assessment has been done and the footpaths are very good quality. I've walked them myself. There is the grass verges, there are a few trees and that in the road, but none of that area there meets our intervention level for remediation or anything like that. There are a few small jobs that can be done under our normal works maintenance program. So I'd like to move the Motion be passed.
Thank you, councillor Casey. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Item 12, we don't have any receipt of petitions nor tenders in item 13. No notified motions. Thank you, councillors, for being kind to me today. Item 15, any public participation, none unregistered. Item 16, late business. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just really wanted to report on the Cruising the Coast fun run, the inaugural fun run that was held on the weekend. Council was part of that process of supporting that fun run through a community grant. There was 170 registrations for the fun run, which was fantastic for the inaugural event. There was a donation made to the Queensland Council Corporation for $4,000 from some of the proceeds from that fund, and the balance of the funds will go towards supporting the Serena Surf Life Saving. So fantastic event.
Congratulations, I saw the photos and it was great, and I think it will only build from here. Other late business, councillor Inglet.
Thank you, Chair. I attended on behalf of the Mayor the 19th Annual World Sooty Grunter Championship presentation up at Youngler Dam on Sunday. I get all the good jobs. It was a good job actually, because I went 2 years ago and it was well more attended than 2 years ago. It's part of our overall fishing strategy, and we were one of the major supporters of the event. The winner of the overall prize went to a Matthew from Kilcoy, which demonstrates there are people willing to travel for these sorts of events. He's also on their local tourism board, so good luck explaining that one to them. A young fella, Oscar, won the junior and overall prize of a sooty grunter measuring 353 millimetres. So he got the overall big fish prize. Surprisingly, there were a number of donuts, that's what they call people who got zero fish, for the weekend, but they were and that just goes to prove, they're a thing that you've got to fight to get. All the fish were released, obviously, at the end of the day, and the camping up there was well received by everyone, and a great time of the year to be doing it. So thanks passed on from the Fish Stocking Association to Council for their support of the event.
Fantastic, that's great. Councillor Bella.
I'd just like to highlight that on Saturday, Ring will be holding another event in a similar spot to the one last week. It was a very successful event last week, and this one is basically just about supporting local industries and businesses. It was pleasing to see that the focus was on that. It was an overarching strategy rather than just as a response to a certain number of individuals who came from down south campaigning to shut down our industries. So I'd encourage everyone once again to attend an event that is of great value to this region. These sort of things are a demonstration to people that we value our industries here, and I maintain if we don't show that we value them, then people are quite willing to try and take them away from us.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bella, and I'd also like to concur with that. 9:30 here, the Go Gully Basin Rally, and for those, I think majority of councillors were at the last rally, and congratulations, Councillor Bella, on your comments. You spoke exceptionally well, and the feedback was very positive by those who were in attendance, and it was great to see, I think, councillors standing up and representing their community, and whether you're a coffee shop owner or whether you work directly in the mining industry, everyone will be impacted on the policy setting for coal mining and the decision to open the Gully Basin in the future. So 9:30 here, for those of us, it's our second rally. Told people don't be scared. It was fantastic to see. So hopefully everyone who attended told 10 people, and we'll see a bigger representation there. I wanted just to share with you as well, I attended on behalf of the Mayor and Council the Channel 7 Young Achiever Awards in Brisbane on Friday night, which was a much bigger event than I was aware of, 400 attendees, and mayors and council representatives from different communities across Queensland who had young people nominated, which was fantastic to see, including the Minister, Di Farmer, attending as well. And we had two entries across 3 participants, with Ethan Laval and Flynn Bushell, obviously with Project Skate Park nominated for the BB Print Regional Achiever Award. And I do want to acknowledge BB Print. It's great to see them as a local business supporting this event, along with Aman Ashraf, who is a powerful speaker, and she's definitely an ambassador for Islam and in particular her community, her Islamic community. And she was actually the overall winner of the Regional Young Achiever Award, which was great to see. She is studying medicine at the moment, and is a great ambassador for multiculturalism and for our community. And I just wanted to mention to councillors, and I did record it, she actually paid thanks to Mackay region, the community she lives in, and the council as well, for the positive leadership that's shown by everyone in this community. So it was out of all of the participants and winners, she was the only one that actually thanked her community that she's a part of. So it was just great to see, and it was quite inspiring to see the amount of young people there represented from all across the state. So I just wanted council to be aware of that, and we pass on our congratulations. They've already written to me. They very much appreciated that council supported someone attending there to support them as well. So it was a great evening, and thank you for that. Councillor May.
Could we, through the Mayor's office, send a letter of congratulations to those 3 people?
Be wonderful.
That would be great.
Yes, we'll get that actioned for his return. Did I have anyone else have any late business? Okay, the next item 17 is confidential reports, and we do note there we have several advisory committee minutes and actions. Does the council want to go into confidential at all? If you feel comfortable? No? Great. Excellent. That's the answer I was hoping for. So 17, we'll move straight on. 17.1 is the draft audit committee minutes and action items for April. Someone move. Councillor Payton, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. The 17.2 is the draft meeting minutes of the Water and Waste Advisory meeting held 25th of March. So moved by Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Englert. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And 17.3 is the draft meeting minutes of the Transport and Drainage Advisory Committee. So moved by Councillor Casey, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. That was a great meeting. Thank you very much. And with that, I declare the meeting closed.
Congratulations to the